So before we get started, I've got something very important to ask. If you could hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell, that means so much to me. These things are extremely important to YouTube's algorithms. And actually, only about 7% of the people who watch Against the Tide Media's videos are subscribed. Now in the past 3 years we've been up, our channel has gotten about 500,000 views, which is incredible, but that's still pretty low in comparison to other YouTube channels who cover similar topics. And with truthful and meaningful projects like The Chosen, The Shift, and our own up-and-coming streaming series, Anti, we've got a lot to share about, and we could use your help in this journey. Thank you.
Because you've mentioned the word hunger several times, and what they want to know, and it's the same thing I'm thinking, why is your character always eating? I mean, how much do you actually eat during all of the takes you might have to do? That's from Fred and Melanie Means.
Anthony, just that question is making me hungry.
Yeah. Hello, Chosen fans. We have a treat for you tonight. We have Elijah Alexander, better known in Jerusalem as Atticus Emilius Pulcher.
Atticus Emilius Pulcher?
That's right, you said it. And that's coming up next on Chatting with the Chosen. Elijah, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Hey, it's great to be here, Brother Anthony. Great to be here.
I think a lot of people are going to be happy with this interview. You have a very compelling character.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think he's pretty compelling too. It's a lot to do with the writing. I mean, they created an actor's dream in Atticus, and so that makes it all the easier and all the more fun as an actor. You know, when a character is well designed and well written, and there's enough sort of mystery and uncertainty there to fill in the blanks. Yeah, so I'm grateful.
That's great. And before we get into your role and your whole acting in this, let's talk about you. Because you have a very interesting life. We had a short chat before this, and you were telling me that you're deeply religious. You told me you were a Sephardic Jew. You said you were a practicing Buddhist. Your dad was from Egypt and Israel, or both? Was it both? I don't remember.
Born.
I'll give you a second to tell her. I'm just trying to remember because I thought it was so interesting. Your mom was a Lutheran, but she converted to Judaism. Mm-hmm. I think you moved west. Was that in Europe, though? I don't remember that. You said you moved west.
We moved to the Middle East, actually.
Okay, and then you were converted at your bar mitzvah. And of course, everything I said was just one big lump of coal, so maybe you could straighten that out. Tell us all about it.
Hey, I'm very impressed, Anthony, that you got the bullet points, for sure.
Good. Now you got to fill it in.
You know, it's interesting. I've been through a real spiritual vision quest in my life. Yes, it started out, I was born a Jew. Traditionally, my father was born in Cairo and raised partly in France and mostly in Israel through his teenage years and early 20s. In 1956, when Nasser came into power in Egypt, he exiled all the Jews. And so my family, literally with just the clothes on their backs, they were exiled and left and sought asylum in France, in Paris, actually. And then after 2 years of intense anti-Semitism, they moved to Israel. And he was in the Israeli army along with my aunt, and then came to the U.S. because my uncle Julius, who's Polish and a Holocaust survivor, may he rest in power, He's gone now, but he's responsible for bringing my entire family from Israel to Detroit, Michigan, to the U.S.
I see.
So thank you to Uncle Julius. He was a great man. And like I said, his whole family, Holocaust survivors.
Now, where were you born? Where were you born?
I was born in Detroit,
You were
Michigan.
in Detroit.
Yeah. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. My mother is Irish, Welsh, and was a Lutheran. That was an interesting match, for both families. The whole religious, it didn't cause a lot of strife, but it's a big deal, someone's religious history.
Yeah.
And it's usually has to do with families who are inflexible in their thought and and so it can cause problems. I don't first particularly understand it, and I suffered because of it as a young boy. So that really launched me into a quest for a spiritual home base, a quest for the truth, for my own truth, and for my own personal and intimate relationship with God. So I was born a Jew. My mother converted from Lutheranism to Judaism when she married my father. However, she married my father in a Reformed synagogue. And when I came of age and was getting ready to have my bar mitzvah, I was being trained Hebrew school, which is where I decided I wanted to become an actor, by the way, studying the Bible, studying the Old Testament.
Wow.
The 5 books of Moses in Hebrew school. And that's where the fire was lit. But before I was bar mitzvah at the age of 13 in a conservative synagogue, I had to do mikvah. In addition to my mother and my sister, the 3 of us all had to convert and do mikvah to be recognized by the conservative Jewish faith as a Jew, because the orthodoxy was saying, your mother's not born Jewish, you're not a Jew. You have to convert, right? Even within Judaism, there's Reformed conservative orthodoxy. They each have their own ideas about what makes a Jew and what doesn't. So it's interesting. I had people telling me I wasn't Jewish. I was, so I had to, I wasn't considered. We weren't considered. My mother wasn't. The marriage wasn't considered legitimate because it was performed in a Reformed synagogue. I could go on and on. The crux of this all was that it launched me on this quest for my own spirituality, and into a deep study of religion and all religions. In college, I became fascinated with Lutheranism, and if I think hard enough about it, it probably was sparked by my mother's faith, before she married my father. And she actually went, when my father and her divorced, she went back to the faith of her childhood.
I see.
So yeah, I've been through studying many of the world religions. I got deep into Kabbalah while I was, when I first moved to Los Angeles, and I got very involved in studying mystical Judaism. And that took me to the next level, I guess, where I just immersed myself in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism to start, and then Zen Buddhism, and now Hinduism. And I'm really fascinated with religion, what religious conviction, what creates people's strength of belief. And then, so throughout the course of my life, I've, of course, come into contact with the Bible and the New Testament several times. I've read it. I've had to study the Quran for roles that I've played. I've played several Muslim roles. So I've studied the Quran. I'm now studying the Bhagavad Gita, which is fascinating. Yeah,
That's a mouthful.
From the Upanishads. Yeah, the ancient Hindi texts.
Wow.
What's fascinating is that there's so much that is the same, throughout all of these ancient texts from each of the world religions. So much that is similar. And, throughout the course of my life, like I said, my experience has informed my own personal belief. I believe very strongly in God. And then I'm introduced to Dallas Jenkins and The Chosen 2 years ago. Is it 2 years ago? Yeah, during a pandemic, one of very few productions filming. And I'm introduced to Dallas through a mutual friend of his who I worked with on a religious film called Amazing Love, which involved the story of Hosea and Gomer.
Right.
And one of Dallas's really good friends directed it.
You shall not be for another. And I will be for you always. Come.
Dallas told me this on the first day on set. He said, I vetted you. You have a good reputation. My buddy Kevin Downs had some nice things to say about you. So yeah, I had, and then I'm introduced to a world of the scripture, the New Testament, and Christ and his disciples, and a period of history that I know very little about, even though I do know a lot of Christ's teachings. But this opportunity gave me an immersive sort of in-depth dive into the life of Christ. And yeah, I have to say, I have been truly moved by the living Spirit of Christ. And it has been, I think it's fortuitous. I think that it is, God is behind, bringing me into contact with the people of The Chosen, since my study has been the life of Christ. And I've been absolutely fascinated by so much. And the way that Jonathan gives real life to this man, and with this amazing cast that's been assembled, it really is. It feels like I am Atticus.
I love connecting with the environment.
As Elijah, I'm given an opportunity to be an observer and to learn about Christ as it's happening, and him choosing his disciples and moving forward throughout history as it's happening. And it's been a real gift.
You've done such a great job with the character. I keep wanting to call you Atticus. I keep forgetting.
Well, I appreciate that, Anthony. Thank you. It's like I said, it's one of those things where it's an actor's dream role for me, because my life is in a place where there's a curiosity that I have as Elijah that Atticus has on paper. He's curious, he's adaptable, he is willing to learn and grow.
What is he, Simon? Look, I'm just interested to see what happens next.
He's in a very confident place, but he's been moved. He's been moved by this charismatic leader who comes into town and shakes everything up. So I get to be curious and supple and learn as I go. And it's completely in sync with what the character's doing. So it's, I think that's why there's been such a natural synergy.
Yeah, and you never stop learning when it comes to scripture. It's just unreal. It's always giving.
It really is. It really is. It's it's a continual gift.
Yeah.
And it also lends itself to interpretation. And so when you have a group of actors interpreting scripture, a director and producers and writers, I mean, all of that interpretation is one of many. And as reader, you can have an interpretation. Through ministry, you can get another interpretation, and then through a TV series, yet another. And it is alive. I mean, and that's what I love about these ancient texts, from all religions, is that they are living. Bibles are living and breathing, and that's kind of how I see my relationship with God, as a living, breathing, growing, expansive relationship. And I think that's what keeps it a certain freshness about it. And I think that's what this show does so well, is it's alive with humanity and with magic and mysticism and mythology and history. And all of those things are being interpreted. I mean, this is why I love and honor and truly respect artists in this collaborative art form, is because it's all breathing and living and expanding. And, with TV and film, you get the added benefit of immortality, in a certain way. It's different from theater in that way. Theater is very ephemeral and
they used to say film is forever.
Yeah, I mean, and TV now is more filmic and more cinematic than it ever has been. So it's there is a certain immortal quality to it that is exciting, I guess.
So you went to grammar school in Detroit. Did you also go to high school in Detroit?
I went to high school in Detroit, and then I went to college in Detroit. I went to the University of Michigan, graduated there, and then set out into the next venture beneath the skies, into the greater world. I went to grad school in New Haven, and I really to the Yale School of Drama, and I really hadn't. Interestingly enough, I traveled as a kid. Our family traveled, and like I told you earlier in our first conversation, we lived in the Middle East for several years. My father spoke 5 different languages, and we lived in Iran, in Tehran, in the 70s.
Wow.
When the Shah was in power, and
that was a tumultuous time. Yeah,
it was, and literally. Just before the revolution, we left 8 months before it happened, but my father was there right up until the end. When the revolution happened in '79, he left maybe 2 3 months before that. Uh-oh. So it was but when we were there, it was an amazing time, just to be acculturated in such a strange and different way. And to be introduced to new religions, the Shia and the Sunni and to Islam. I mean, that was probably my introduction to Islam.
Right.
And of course, there was a community of Iranian, Persian Jews, and there were Christians and there were Muslims, and then it was right around that time that I had my first trip to Israel, and that I will never forget as a young man. And I've been back several times since. I have a lot of extended family in Israel. But yeah, so then I went to grad school, East Coast, Anthony, which is where you are, and then then moved to New York. And I got to say, it was it was like a little bit like a country mouse becoming city mouse. I was, suburban Detroit. So I was, and Detroit was the biggest city I'd known up until I moved to New York. And I was shocked and overwhelmed. And
you actually lived by me. Now I'm in Astoria, where we have Kaufman Astoria Studios, Silver Cup Studios, and now Robert De Niro's building a new one here. But that was way back in when? About 2000, I think you said.
No, I moved to New York in '96.
Okay.
And I bounced around, and then I settled in Astoria.
Wow.
And in '96, Astoria was all Greek. I mean, totally Greek, and it was like being in Greece. And I've never traveled to Greece. I've always wanted to, but it was amazing. I learned Greek, and I ate some terrific Greek food, and the community was lively. And so now Astoria is very different. It's got many, many different cultures there, not just Greek, but so I spent about 8 years in New York, and in and out of New York. And during that time, I went overseas and worked in London and the UK, all over the UK. And but I was based in New York, and I miss it. I miss it.
Yeah. About what age were you when you knew you were going to be an actor or wanted to be an actor?
Great question. Now that I'm talking to you about this and my personal history, I think it was probably around 13 when I was in Hebrew school.
Uh-huh.
And I was hearing and reading these stories that just came alive for me. I wanted to be Moses, and I wanted to be, I was learning about Elijah from Kings 1 and 2, and
that's really cool. So it was religion that moved you towards acting.
Yeah, and that of course was before I was Elijah. I changed my name in 2000. So Eliyahu is the Hebrew name for Elijah, and that was my Hebrew name, Eliyahu, after my grandfather Eli, on my dad's side. But I was born Stephen Elliott.
Uh-huh.
So I changed my name to sort of become closer to I really did some investigating of both sides of my family, and went and took trips and traveled to where my father was born, where he was raised, went to where my mother's family was from, in Wales and in Ireland and Liverpool. That really took my spiritual vision quest, really moved it forward. And that was in the year 2000.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know we have some fan questions. So let me go through the list with you. We have somebody by the name of Kathy Hart, who says, I'd like to know who is Elijah's inspiration or model for portraying Atticus. How did you develop, if you even developed the character? I guess you do. How did you develop that character?
Oh, great question. Kathy Hart?
Kathy.
Great question, Kathy. It's interesting. I when I was cast, it was very quick, as it sometimes is. I was cast, and then 4 days later, I was on set.
That's quick.
Yeah. So, but I did, when I first started auditioning and getting called back and, going through the audition process, I really did work on the character in the way I work on all characters, and, just creating a very intimate, personal connection, finding the places where I connect, where Elijah connects to this character. And so I don't particularly use a model, although I watched every Roman film, and I went through Netflix and watched every bit of Roman history, I could possibly get my hands on. And what's interesting is Russell Crowe's Gladiator kept coming up for me in terms of archetype, because I sort of, thought that Atticus, although he wasn't a gladiator, he was in the military, could have become a general.
You should be a general.
Now, what fun would that be?
Decided not to, and went to work for the emperor as a cohortis urbani, as a part of his elite task force.
Right.
But there's a certain confidence and a certain experience that Russell Crowe has in Gladiator that I wanted to embody, So, but other than that, it was really like I said, I did a lot of research on the history and watched how military men in the Roman army comport themselves and how they act. And here's a guy, Atticus, who's, in the first, when I first appear, the description of him was, on the getting ready to retire. So he's literally at the end of his career, which doesn't say anything about his age, because they were everyone was much younger back then, doing everything, it seems. But it did say something about his place in life. And so it was those little details, and learning about Roman culture and the cohortes urbani, that people who did that job for a living. So anyway, long answer, Kathy Hart, but I appreciate the question. I draw from, history. You got to learn. This is a period piece, so I had to learn as much about the history. Fortunately, I've spent many years working in theater, and I've done Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. I played Mark Antony. I read. I'm a big fan of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, his journals, and so this is where I sort of get fed, and hopefully, some of that. They lived, these Romans, most of them, they lived by a moral code, and I'm not, that doesn't mean that they're all good, nice people, but there are
I think it's more of a social code than a moral code, but
yes. When we're talking about Marcus Aurelius, this is all about morality and spirituality and how to a real model of social activism and behavior, and so both, yeah. But we bring, as actors, we bring ourselves to every role we undertake, but it's really exciting for me to play a fictional character in a biblical drama where most of the characters are taken from scripture. So even though the role in law enforcement for the emperor is a real one, Atticus didn't exist in history. This particular Atticus Aemilius Pulcher did not exist historically, although someone like him, I'm sure, did. Do you see what I mean?
yeah, I have a feeling you're going to make everybody start looking this character up in the history book. I mean, you really do a good job. You really do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's see.
You're a kind man. You're a kind man.
Just tell you how it is. That's all I do. Another question from James Ajidawa, and please excuse me if I say their names wrong. He remembers seeing you as Hosea. He said he liked you, did a very good job in that movie. And he wanted to know, what do you want to see from Atticus in future seasons? How would you like to see this?
Oh, goodness. James, great question. I have very, very specific hopes and desires. Unfortunately, I can't share any of those. I once you get into a character and start moving and living and breathing, every actor wants to flesh, wants great arcs, right? Where characters change and grow and move. I mean, that's like life, right? So, and I feel like Atticus is doing that. He's already done it just in one season. And I think he'll continue to do that. Part of what why this character was written was as a device, almost so the audience could have someone to experience Jesus and not only have their own experience of Jesus and the disciples, but see it through an outsider's point of view, through an outsider's lens. And Atticus provides that because he really does. He's a witness, right? He's a witness in a way that only a Roman outsider could be. Mm. So I have hopes, but I'm not attached to them because I'm realistic. I understand my role in the whole process. And of course, I don't have any control over where my character goes. That's up to the director and the writers. But I'm grateful to have this to have this sort of investment, because it really does. I can dwell in possibility because that's where Atticus is. He's sort of in this suspended in between place where I have a particular, job in law enforcement. I have to keep the peace. I have to make sure the zealots don't assassinate magistrates or, murder people.
God. Murder training. Real subtle. I'll be seeing you real soon, Simon.
So I'm a protector of the realm, and also of, I'm protecting and serving. So I'm a servant. I have a particularly defined role, but I'm also a human being and one who is intensely curious about Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And that's in there. And I think that's so much fun because, a certain curiosity, an insatiable curiosity is what makes, what creates magic. I mean, what creates possibilities,
I wonder if that wonder that he has over Jesus is going to convert him when this is all over. That's going to be interesting.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. That's for sure.
But it's interesting. We as actors, unless you're actor, writer, producer, you don't really have control over that. But what I like to do is I like to stay hungry and stay curious and stay open and stay human, as opposed to let something, the role I'm playing in terms of cohortis urbani, the enforcer, right? As opposed to letting that take over at all costs.
Right.
I let the humanity come. Sort of, I lean into that, and I do that with every character I play.
Right?
Because you have to, in order to make it personal, in order to make it accessible.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason people are interested, at least interested, whether they like Atticus or not. They're interested because he's interested. It's that old actor adage, right? Be interested, not interesting, right? So
very good.
That's what I'm just trying to stay curious, stay interested, and stay open.
Well, you're keeping us curious too. We're trying to see which way you're going to go here because you're not that dislikable. I don't know what the word is. You haven't been unfair yet You've been doing your job. You've got a mean side that's kind of reminiscent of the meanness of Rome, but yet you look like you're looking for something. Like you're looking for something. So it's going to be interesting.
I'm just hunting.
Well, I think Atticus is a seeker of the truth. I've answered the questions of why, or the question of why, that is, for myself. That's not necessarily in the scripts, but hopefully that comes out in the performance. Because you have to answer the question of why for yourself.
Right.
But he's a real seeker of truth. So.
Yeah. Well, Sandra Salmons didn't actually send the question. She said, you're such an intriguing character. You can't help but watch you and then try to figure out what you're thinking. So she's doing the same thing. She's trying to figure out which way you're going with this. That was Sandra.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm given the gift of not having too many lines. And I do think it's a gift. I come from a world of language, the world of theater, where everything that a character is thinking is spoken, or much of it. And, in TV and film, you don't have the language you do in theater. And Atticus uses his words very carefully, very cautiously. And so you don't always know what he's thinking. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the design.
I see. So Fred and Melanie Means, I got to bring their question up because you've mentioned the word hunger several times. And what they want to know, and it's the same thing I'm thinking, why is your character always eating? I mean, how much do you actually eat during all of the takes you might have to do? That's from Fred and Melanie Means.
Anthony, just that question is making me hungry.
You were ready for that one, weren't you? Yeah, it's all we see. You're always kind of picking at something. Now, is that something you've incorporated, or is that written in? Take your time. Take your time. You have to eat.
Just a little snack. I like to stay hungry. I just like to stay hungry.
That's funny. That's so funny.
I think that, well, so yes, part of this was written in the script that in some scenes Atticus is eating. The writers wrote it into the script that Atticus is eating in some of the scenes. And then, when we're there and we're shooting and there's a negotiation, because it's a collaboration. So, Dallas would ask me, what do you want to be eating in this scene? Do you think you should be eating in this scene? And then, I'll ask him the same thing. Dallas, do you think I should be eating in this scene? And then, it becomes a thing, but it has to be grounded in a reason. Again, I had to answer the question why for myself, right. because if you just have someone eating for no reason at all, it becomes gratuitous and it becomes it's no longer memorable and it's no longer seems authentic, right? So I figured it out for myself why Atticus is eating, and it's a combination of things. It's a real combination of things. But why do we eat in certain situations? People have certain tics or comforters, right? When they're in stressful situations, right? Right. Some people smoke. Some people right. have addictions. Chew gum, whatever it is. I think partly when Atticus is in thinking mode, when he's in work mode, which involves a certain amount of stress, the eating is a comforter. It comforts. Also, it really keeps it for me. For instance, when I'm learning lines for a show, I like to be moving. I like to be in action, whether it's running or hiking outside, connected with nature, in a deeply personal way. It's usually outside for me, but it involves moving. And it helps me to think, and it helps me to remember not only lines, but what's happening in between them. And I think Atticus thinks better when he's eating.
Interesting.
And so when he's processing things, it helps to focus on something that is comforting. So, I mean, that's probably one of the easy answers. People, why do they do certain things? It launched me into this whole exploration of why people get addicted, like we said earlier, to certain things. What's the source of that need, right? Because addictions fill a need, and it's usually about an addiction is usually about wanting to connect to the eternal, to universal, to higher power, and so we want to escape ourselves or be comforted in some way, fill a hole, we come from a place of deficiency. And so I think this eating also has something to do with childhood and, Atticus's personal history of needs not being fulfilled, not being met. Anyway, those are
good reasons.
Psychological reasoning, and you could always just say he's hungry. But I think I watch people who have stressful jobs, and sometimes they do. They have a tic, or they chew gum, or they eat. It's a way to focus energy and deal with stress. So, and Atticus is constantly in stressful situations. Although there's a calmness of confidence in his demeanor, you get a little glimpse of, his desire to comfort through the eating, I think.
Yeah, I see. So this question from Linda King focuses on a particular scene. Why do you think Jesus and Atticus acknowledged but did not speak to one another when Jesus was being questioned by Quintus? Do you recall that scene?
Of course, yes. I think Atticus is intrigued by this charismatic figure in a way that others perhaps are not. And also, I think that look was probably about mutual respect. However Jesus feels about Rome and Romans, and however I feel about Jews, or it's different. You have the zealotry, and then you have Jesus's followers, the Jewish community, and the Pharisees, and you have all these different groups. And however I feel about any of them, I feel differently about Jesus. Not only because of what I've heard, but now that's the first time we actually are coming into each other's orbits, into each other's space and sharing company. And there is so I'm able to experience him as a person.
Right.
And there's a fascination. There's a fascination there. So I think that look was probably really about a mutual respect and fascination, a mutual interest.
I see. Yeah. So Cindy Randall asked a question that I had to go back and look again because this happened so quick. It was a blink of an eye thing. She asks, as Jesus was brought before Quintus, you put your hand on the shoulder of Jesus as you were walking in. Was that scripted? Was that impulse? Is there any significance to that?
The significance is up to all of the viewers and who saw it. it was not scripted, and there was something that compelled me to reach out and touch him. And it's amazing that it was captured. It was one of those sort of unplanned moments that just happened, and it was because I was compelled, and I don't know why. But it wasn't scripted. It didn't feel out of place or appropriate. It felt I didn't really think about it. Yeah. Right. So I don't know what it means. But it was a compulsion,
Sort of off the cuff. I guess it was an off the cuff thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It was something that I was drawn to do, and he was okay with it. We just sort of had this moment, and that's, that's interesting. That's one of the beautiful things about TV and film, is that you can capture those moments. They happen.
Yeah.
In theater, you're rehearsing, for months. Not so much recently. It's like about 3 weeks. But, it used to be, you had 5 to 6 weeks before you're opening a show. And so you're rehearsing those moments, and you need to repeat them. Right.
Right.
But you have, as if they were happening for the first time. But with TV and film, you have the luxury and the beauty of being impulsive, creating moments that happen in the moment, truly in the moment. And
well, that passed so quick, I didn't even see it. When I saw the question, I had to go back and look for that. So that was really a good eye, Cindy. Good eye.
Very good eye, I have to say, because it's really quick, and it happens just as we're entering Quintus's office. And so good eye. People are paying attention.
They are. Sure. We've got some fan base, that's for sure.
That's something like love. There are 390 million fans worldwide.
How about that? And they all want to know why you're eating peanuts all the time, or olives, or whatever.
Well, I feel very, very blessed, very grateful. So
yeah. So we might have had this answered. I know you talked about this in the beginning a little. This is from Sharon Middleton. She asked, has being a part of this project changed your view on how you read the Bible or how you hear Bible stories? And has it become more real life for you? And you don't have to go too deep into that, but.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I really have been moved, as I said, by the living Christ, by the man Christ who walked the earth, and what he taught and how he lived his life. And I'm getting to experience it immersively, and it really, really moved me and really changed me and really taught me. And I feel like I have grown to new depths and new heights of my explored spirituality because of the new script, because of the scripture, because of the New Testament, because of Jesus Christ, because of Jonathan Rumi, because and because of The Chosen. So yes, it's changed me utterly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's changing a lot of people who watch it, and that's why it's just growing and growing. Karen Rose asked an interesting question. What has been your biggest challenge working on The Chosen so far, and how have you overcome it?
Oh, these are terrific questions. Thank you all for these amazing questions. My greatest challenge working on this show, I said this earlier last year. I did an interview with Dallas, and one of the things I said was that his set is one of the safest, most inspiring environments I've ever worked in. When you have that, when you feel safe as an actor and you feel trusted and respected and safe, it really raises the level of work, that raises the standards, increases the possibilities. And so I guess my greatest challenge has been working, because I haven't done, in the last couple of years, I haven't done a lot of TV and film work. I've done mostly theater. So I guess my greatest challenge was accommodating for a different medium. That's been an exciting challenge, a really fun one, because I really enjoy working with the camera. But you're working on a smaller scale. You're working on, you're not playing for big houses and for the back. You don't need to be heard in the back row. You're usually mic'd with a little mic here, and you can be very intimate and very quiet and very naturalistic. So I think that's probably, as it was, one of my most exciting challenges. And the only way to overcome them is to embrace them. So, and if you're on a safe, inviting, welcoming, trusting, respected set, it's much easier to explore those things, to take them on. And it's just about doing it.
Right.
Doing it.
Right. It looks like it's a very tight group. We talked earlier. I was saying that I don't watch much of the behind the scenes because I like the magic of the show. Maybe I'll go back after the 8th season and go look at all the behind the scenes. But it looks like a really tight group of people. It looks like from what I'm hearing from you, this is a place that you're very at home with.
Yeah, it is, and it's unusual. It's I couldn't actually believe how easy everyone was with each other, how well everyone worked with each other and off each other. And it was just, like I said, it creates a certain energy that only increases the possibilities. It only, it increases, it feeds into a morale, into an energy, a loving energy that is ultimately beneficial for the project. So, and the cast is so beautiful and loving. I mean, across the board. I couldn't believe that during a pandemic, we're on a set, because my first day was in Goshen Studios in Provo, Utah, and I'm on a set during a pandemic with hundreds of people and camels and horses and goats and donkeys, and everyone is masked and everyone wants to be there, feels fortunate and grateful to be there, and you can sense it. You don't have to, it's not something they talk about. You just sense this real sense of service and contribution. People want, and that I've never experienced that before. So it's new for me, and yeah, I do feel at home there. So
that's awesome.
Hopefully yeah.
So here's one that I don't know if you could share too much. This is from Kathleen Hayes. She wants to know, have you been made aware of where the character arc for Atticus is going forward, which we spoke about a little bit? Yeah. And does that influence your portrayal of the character? If you don't know Atticus's future, are you given direction differently from what you'd get if you did not know? And I know you spoke about you're really not in control, but maybe you want to give her...
Yeah, they know. The creators, they know where they want Atticus to go. And if I can't possibly, but I can just stay true and live this moment to moment. And if there's something that seems, in terms of the long-term trajectory of the character, that seems out of place, Dallas, the director, will guide me gently away from the edge. So as actor, I only have the script in front of me, and then within that, I can, I have room to make choices. But Dallas is the shepherd, and he knows where Atticus is going to be in the last season. So I just trust in my leaders, in my shepherds. and do what I can do to give life and breath to a character moment to moment, and stay open. Like I said, it's but that's part of who this character is. He's really open, and it's interesting. We as actors, when we take on roles, we can't judge our characters. Otherwise, we'll never get to the core of who that character is if we start from a place of judgment. And I feel like I do that with Atticus, and Atticus does that with everyone he encounters. He doesn't start from a place of judgment. He judges by what someone does, their actions, right?
Right.
And possibly what they say, but I don't think he pays much attention to lip service, to what people are saying. It's more about what they do, and then he makes a judgment. And that's why I was following Z all around, because he planned an assassination of a Roman magistrate,
right?
And I watched him do it. So based on that, I had to make certain judgments about him and go after him, because my ultimate goal is to protect and serve. But I don't judge Atticus, and I can't foresee where he's going. But I think it helps this character to approach every situation in a place of objectivity and non-judgment, and I think that's why I'm so fascinated with this charismatic leader who comes into town and develops a following and has done no harm. He's performed miracles that I hear about.
I saw a man who had not stood on his own 2 feet in half a century, bounding like a boy. I watched a martyr throw down his weapon and take a knee. I saw a lunatic's eyes go clear. Jesus of Nazareth did those things.
And he's moving people's lives. He's moving their hearts and minds. He's causing them to come in droves to hear him speak. And he's doing it in a peaceful way. It's a peaceful movement.
Well, my thoughts exactly. See you in the morning then, for our report to Quintus. Good chat.
This is something I've never seen before as Atticus. And I think that it's just a really fun place to be. And it's almost a childlike place to come from. And I actually think that's a good way to describe how I approach most of the characters I take on, from a real childlike, a place of childlike innocence, where you just figure out where this person came from. Like, why does he behave in the way he does? There's got to be a reason. There's got to be something that happened in his past to cause him to behave in the way he does, right? And when you do that, you're able to see people with compassion, And I think that Atticus he's so experienced. Like I said, he's near retirement, right? So he's been doing this a long time. He comes from a place of giving people the benefit of the doubt. And yet he's savvy and he's smart, and he can, based on someone's behavior, he can predict what's going to happen, but not with Jesus. Not with Jesus.
He doesn't strike me at all as threatening or scary. And that scares me. Now, maybe I'm just interested to see how he'll take to wrist irons.
Anyway, that goes above and beyond the question. I am as excited as all of you to see where Dallas and and the writers and the producers where they take Atticus, because I'm going there. Wherever they want Atticus to go, I'm going.
You're going, right? That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm going.
This was a great conversation, Elijah. Thank you so much. I want to hit you with a little blitz of 10 quick questions. It's something I saw that James Lipton used to do from inside the Actors Studio.
Oh, of course, yes.
And he always closed with these questions, so I'm going to borrow. It's not steal, it's borrow from him.
May he rest in power. He's passed. Yeah,
absolutely.
He was terrific.
Yes, he was. I enjoyed listening to him. So, what is your favorite color?
Red.
Who is your favorite actor?
Al Pacino.
Do you have a favorite word or phrase? Or quote?
How about now?
How about now?
What about your least favorite word?
Despair.
What really motivates you?
Ways to be of service these days. Ways to be of service. Fulfilling my destiny. Purpose. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And on the opposite side, what disheartens you the most?
The suffering in the world, the suffering, the needless suffering.
Is there another profession that you would be interested in if you weren't an actor?
Yes. Since the pandemic, I got an opportunity to teach. I was a high school teacher for much of it at an alternative high school. I love working with kids. I love learning from them, learning how to be a better teacher. I think in the future, I would like to be more consistently involved with young people and in a teaching capacity. I'm also in a place where I really want to connect to a great teacher myself. And that's why I'm reading, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and Marcus Aurelius and Thich Nhat Hanh, and reading the New Testament and learning from Christ and the Buddha and Krishna, because I'm really desirous of connecting with great teachers. So being a student and being a teacher.
Is there a profession you would not go near, wouldn't get into?
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't remember this from Lipton's spreadsheet.
We'll edit it, so don't worry.
Profession I wouldn't go near. Accounting, working with numbers, math.
Words are good, numbers are bad.
I mean, I like the Enneagram. I like the sort of deciphering what's behind the energy of numbers, but tabulating numbers and working with money, accounting, it always gives me a headache.
All right. And then finally, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive in heaven?
You ready to go back?
All right. Ready to go back. Elijah, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. Keep doing what you're doing because the character is awesome. You were awesome as Hosea as well. I did get the chance to see you in that. In fact, I used that when we were back and forth trying to get this meeting together, and I didn't feel well the last time, and you said, "Don't worry about it." So what did I tell you? I owe you Homer of barley.
you quoted the movie. That's right.
I owe you
A homer of barley. And a half homer of barley, too.
but you can keep the silver. Because Elijah, God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Brother Anthony. I hope you have enough there. I probably, forgive me for being long-winded and going into maybe a little too long on these answers, but
Nah.
I really appreciate talking with you. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope to see you again. Yeah. I look forward to good things to come.
So do we.
Take care.
All right. Wow, that was a first.
That was well done, Anthony. Bravo.
That was a first. Yeah, I got to clap for me too.
It was one of those sort of unplanned moments that just happened, and it was because I was compelled, and I don't know why. Yeah, but it wasn't scripted. It didn't feel out of place or appropriate. It felt it. I didn't really think about it. Yeah,
Right.
so I don't know what it means, but it was a compulsion. And I'm on a set during a pandemic with hundreds of people, and camels and horses and goats and donkeys, and everyone is masked.
I wonder how difficult it was getting a mask on the camels.
I'm gonna choke on an almond now.
Take a breather. Take a breather and we'll start over.
Actor chokes on almond. Okay.
During big interview.